welcome you. Call this meeting to order this Wednesday, November the 1st, 2023. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel at a later date. Are there any additional agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on. Is there any declaration of conflict of interest? Seeing none, I will now read the motion for this committee to sit as a hearing board. The motion is that the LPRCA Board of Directors does now sit as a hearing board. I need a mover and a seconder. Rainey and Peter. Dana, could you please read off the roll call?
Shelley Bentley. Here. Dave Barris.
Present.
Doug Brunton.
Present.
Robert Chambers.
Present.
Michael Columbus.
Here.
Thomas Shelley.
Here.
Stuart Patterson. Absent. Chris Van Passen.
Here.
Rainey Weisler. Yes. And John Schulten.
Here. Thank you. I read that motion.
Yeah, but you didn't call the vote.
Oh, okay. So, can you record the vote for us, please?
No, for this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. I slipped up. So I had a mover and a seconder for that motion, and that motion was that the LPRCA Board of Directors is now sit as a hearing board. Those in favor? Thank you. And it goes to show you I'm not perfect. So we're now going to conduct a hearing under section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act in respect of an application by Jake Kolomaya. Am I pronouncing that right?
Correct.
Okay. For permission to construct a non-habitable accessory structure at 130 Brown Street, Port Dover, Norfolk County. The authority has adopted regulations under section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act, which require the permission of the authority for development within an area regulated by the authority in order to ensure no adverse effect on the control of flooding, erosion, dynamic beaches, or pollution, or conservation of land, or to permit alteration to a shoreline or watercourse or interference with a wetland. The staff has reviewed this proposed work, and a copy of the staff report has been given to the applicant and the board. The applicant was invited to file material in response to the staff report, a copy which has also been provided to the board. Submitted by the applicant. Nothing been submitted?
By the applicant.
Okay. So nothing has been submitted by the applicant. The Conservation Authorities Act, section 2812 provides that permission required under the regulation made under clause 1, B, or C shall not be refused or granted subject to conditions unless the person requesting permission has been given the opportunity to require a hearing before the authority. In holding this hearing, the authority board is to determine whether or not a permit is to be issued with or without conditions. In doing so, we can only consider the application in the form that is before us, the staff report, such evidence as may be given, and the submissions to be made on behalf of the applicant. Only information disclosed prior to the hearing is to be presented at the hearing. The proceedings will be conducted according to the Standard Powers Procedure Act. Under section 5 of the Canada Evidence Act, a witness may refuse to answer any question on the ground that the answer may tend to incriminate the person or may tend to establish his/her liability to a civil proceeding at the instance of the Crown or of any person. The procedure in general shall be informal without the evidence before it being given under oath or affirmation. As the hearing proceeds, the procedures listed in the hearing procedure summary provided may be relaxed or abbreviated sufficiently. The authority may ask questions of witnesses for clarification at any time. If the applicant has any questions to ask of the hearing board or of the authority representative, they must be directed to the chair of the board. Having said that, Leanne, please make the introductions and then proceed with your report. Oh, Peter, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just point of order, I don't think my name was included in the roll call.
Peter Heatman is here. I'll make that note.
I'll vote for him.
Thank you, Peter. Notice we do slip once in a while, but not very often.
Good evening, everyone. So as we are here tonight, I'd like to introduce to the hearing board. In the first row over there, we have Jake Colomea and his agent Nathan, and I believe Julian had just
It's a
stepped.
point of order, Mr. Chairman. It's very difficult to hear. I
Oh,
don't know whether the microphone is on.
Sorry, I thought it was left one. Is that better? Okay, awesome. I'll start over again. So I'd like to introduce to the hearing board, and the first row is Jake Colomea, so the landowner here, and his agent Nathan Colomea, and I believe Julian had just stepped out. On August 11th, 2023, Jake Colomea applied to LPRCA under Ontario Regulation 17806 to construct a deck in the rear yard of his existing dwelling at 130 Village Street in Port Dover. On this image, the property is outlined in yellow. So this is on the east side of Port Dover. This road goes up to the marina, and then there's a section of the road that is adjacent to the lake. So this is the portion that's adjacent to the lake. The LPRCA issued a permit for the dwelling in 2018 through a hearing process. So there's a new dwelling constructed on this property. At this location, the property and the associated development is subject to erosion hazards from Lake Erie and slope stability hazards from the associated slope, and is fully regulated under Long Point Region Conservation Authority's Ontario Regulation 17806. The limit of regulated area under Ontario Regulation 17806 is shown in red, and the red hatched area on this map extends to the northward boundary of Brown Street. More specifically, as it relates to this application, the hazard is defined for the Ontario Regulation 17806. The area from the furthest offshore extent of the authority's boundary to the furthest landward extent of the aggregate of the following distances. So here we have Lake Erie, and it shows the regulated area associated with the shoreline erosion hazard, which is applicable for this site. The application is for a approximately 7.3 meter by 4.5 meter non-buildable accessory structure, so a deck in the rear yard. This image shows the profile of the existing slope with the existing conditions on the property. To the right of the image is Lake Erie. As you can see, the physical top of bank, the physical profile of the bank is shown in blue, and the location of the dwelling is shown in the black outlined hatched square on the image. The stable top of bank at this location, based on the geotechnical assessment that was completed, shows that it is in the red line, which puts it approximately 3.1 meters back from the physical top of slope. To give you an idea of what the site looks like, here is some recent photos of the rear yard. This photo is looking to the southwest. The existing dwelling is approximately 9.4 meters back from the physical top of bank, And here is just giving you an idea a little bit more about what the rear yard looks like. And this is looking at the rear yard from the other angle, so from the southwest as well. And here is a photo. I apologize, it's difficult to take a picture of a slope while you're standing on a slope. But this is the, on the back patio looking down towards the lake, just to give you an idea of what the slope looks like at this location. And the last photo is showing you the corner of the dwelling where the proposed deck, this is where it will be situated. The deck will provide an exit from the double doors, from technically the main floor. As part of the application, this rendering was created to show a visual of the proposed deck adjacent to the dwelling. So as you can see here, it's pretty clear where on the property the deck will be located. From kind of an aerial view, here's the site plan that was submitted along with the application. And in yellow highlighted is the area where the proposed deck will be built. So some physical kind of comments on where it'll be built. It's 6 meters back from the physical top of slope, which is 3 meters landward of the existing. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so the stable top of bank is 3.1 meters back from the physical top of bank. So the deck will extend partially into the portion of the slope that is considered unstable. Here just showing kind of a nice profile view. So this is the image we saw before, just with the proposed deck added to it. So again, physical top of slope in the blue, the stable top of bank as determined in the report is in the red, and then the black polygon or the black rectangle is showing an approximate location from the side where the deck will be located. It's partially located within the stable slope allowance, or the portion of the slope that we consider to be unstable. And then in this as well is a minimum setback that we have for accessory buildings or accessory structures from the stable top of bank is 6 meters. So just giving you a visual of what the side profile looks like with LPRCA's setback on it. Policy considerations. So there's a number of kind of policy considerations for this property as it's an erosion hazard. Staff utilize our policies for the administration of the development interference with wetlands and alterations to shorelines and water courses regulation for development within our watershed. Staff have reviewed the policies and provided an analysis. So for the first one, So for the first policy consideration, is the proposed deck is located in an area of least and acceptable risk. As the proposed structure is partially located within the unstable slope, in staff's opinion, it's not located in an area of acceptable risk. For this next policy consideration, LPRCA uses the MNRF technical guide, which provides a consistent and standardized procedure for identification and management of Great Lakes shorelines within the province of Ontario. This highlights some of the main kind of overviews is that the presence of existing development is not to be used as justification for increasing or intensifying development, where infilling development or additions to the existing development is being considered within hazardous lands. The development must be in accordance with the guidance provided by the province of Ontario located within these technical guides. And just some notes about why we want structures to be set back is that there could be additional weight loading from human-made activities such as filling and structures that are a factor that can lead to slope instability. At this location, the stable slope allowance is 3.1 meters landward of the physical top of bank. The slope remains slightly over steepened, meaning that the physical top of bank is not considered stable. The minimum criteria for non-habitable accessory structures is 6 meters from the top of the stable slope. No structures or buildings should be allowed in the unstable portion of the slope, as it may affect the overall slope stability on the subject lands or adjacent lands. The required setback for this type of structure needs to be 9.1 meters from the physical top of bank or 6 meters from the stable top of bank. The structure would need to be reduced in size to meet this policy. Therefore, based on our policy analysis, it is the staff's opinion that the control of erosion will be affected by the proposed development, and therefore staff recommends that the application be refused for the following reasons. The construction of a structure in the Lake Erie shoreline unstable slope and erosion hazard along Brown Street is contrary to LPRCA's policies for development in the area of the subject land. These policies have been implemented to reduce or eliminate preventable property damage due to unstable slopes or shoreline erosion. This construction of a structure affects the control of erosion, and that increases the potential for damage from slope stability and erosion. The proposal is not unique. Therefore, the granting of an exception to the policy could be seen as setting precedent. Similar applications may have to be permitted as a consequence. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Leanne. I now call on the applicant or agent to speak to the application.
For you, Mr. Chair, good evening. My name is Nathan Colomea. I am lawyer for Image Law Group in Simcoe, and I am the lawyer for the owner applicant, Jacob, who, if you can imagine by our last name, is not common, is my brother. And through you, Mr. Chair, thank you to staff for their report. The staff report, as you saw on the last slide, recommends refusal. And we ask that you approve the application. The staff report provides 3 reasons to support the recommendation for refusal. But before we get to those, I'd like to first take you to the staff report itself and to figure 1 in particular, which is one of the images.
Figure 1, you said?
Yes, please.
Page 25. Chairman, I find that as page 25 on our agenda.
Thank you.
And so as you'll see, Brown Street is nearly completely developed. The development on the street ranges from high-intensity condominium units. So you'll see those are the blocks of buildings to the west of the subject lands. And the rest of the street consists of being the large single-family dwellings. And there are 2 or 3, I believe 3 vacant lots near the property. And then if I could take you now, which I assume to be your next page, which is figure 2. So you'll see here the subject lands are highlighted in yellow. And one thing I'd like to point out is the dwelling immediately to the west. As you'll see, it is quite a bit closer to the lake than the subject lands are. So even with the deck, we wouldn't even be much past that structure. And that's the whole house itself, which includes a deck. And this house has existed quite a bit longer than my brother's house without any issue whatsoever. And then lastly, if I can take you just a couple pages over to figure 5. So as you can see, the design for the deck.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, what page are we on?
29.
29?
Thank you. And so the deck design has been reviewed and approved by both an architect and an engineer as evidenced by their stamps. So the first reason provided by staff that the proposed structure is in the unstable slope and erosion hazard is contrary to LPRCA policies put in place to reduce or eliminate preventable property damage due to unstable slopes and shoreline erosion. However, staff haven't shown how the proposed structure will result in preventable property damage. The report is actually quite silent, in fact, with respect to the design of the project. And secondly, staff claimed that the proposed structure affects the control of erosion in that it increases the potential for damage from slope instability and erosion. How? By how much? Staff have not provided any sort of analysis of the property and project-specific calculations or analysis to support their conclusion. And lastly, staff report claims that the proposal is not unique and that to approve the application would be precedent setting. Well, it's simply not true. There's nothing in approving this application that would bind you on any future decision. There's nothing in your policy that would suggest that. And at best, it would be of some persuasive value, but any application that comes before this board is unique and is decided on its own merits, and there's no precedent from one application to another. So you have before you an application for a deck. The design has been reviewed and approved by both an architect and an engineer who have put their professional licensing and liability insurance behind it. The staff have not provided sufficient technical evidence to support their conclusions to, any sort of contradiction to the much more specific and property specific evidence that we provided. And I always like to point out that the MNRF guides are just that. They are guides, they are not law, and they're a starting point for the discussion. Well, the starting point provided by staff was very general. Our design gets into specifics. It's professionally designed, and the deck will be a safe and beautiful addition to the property, and we ask that you approve our application today. And I do have with us, Julian. We have Mr. Julian Stewart from Valley, who, depending on your technical questions, may be able to provide some answers to them, should you so choose. And subject to your questions, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the staff have any questions for the applicant or the agent?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Does the applicant or their agent have any questions for the Conservation Authority staff?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do not.
Are there any questions from the board to either staff or the applicant or the agent? Yes, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to, I'm on page 39 in our agenda, and it shows the backyard, and I want to get clarification on the actual deck. And I see the doors, I guess, that are on the main floor. So, and then on the bottom, you see some, like you have the back area where I assume the deck's gonna go. And it's like a colored stone. I just wonder, is that like kind of the limit of the deck? Can somebody answer that question? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, we don't have your package.
Well, I can show you here.
He's asking if that's.
See this? That picture here is like, I assume the deck's coming out of here.
Yes, correct.
And is this the kind of the limit of it coming out?
The limit of the deck is gonna be pretty much right here.
Oh, at the end of the concrete?
Retaining wall, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Yes,
Can
Robert.
you share that with the other members of the board, with the diagram? I'm interested in the same question, but I didn't see where.
Okay, do you want to borrow this and just show them or?
Sure. Is this page 42 you're
No,
referring to?
page 39.
39. Oh,
Yeah. And you can see the backyard, and he says, you see that concrete, I call it like a parapet wall, retaining wall that angles down, the concrete wall that comes down. I assume, he says the deck will be out to that limit there.
You can probably see it better on page 40.
Can you?
Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
Okay, same thing. So it sticks out just past the I call it the colored, pavers there.
Correct, and that includes the stairs at the end too.
Is that okay, Robert?
Peter,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. On page 29, the applicant referenced, or the agent referenced, the engineer and architect stamp on this project. I'm wondering if the engineer or the architect take into consideration the site-specific characteristics of the ground, or would that stamp be just as valid if it was to be placed in a landlocked property without any exposure to a lake whatsoever?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't speak to what they took into account with respect to this particular design. But I can say that Valley, they were involved with the design of the house itself, including the foundation down to piles. So I would assume, but again, I can't speak for certain on their behalf, that they would have taken those considerations into account, as they're already extensively experienced with this property.
any other questions from the board? I have one question. The one picture shows stairs going down to a platform. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. How far is that platform out from the house? Like, it looks like a long stairs or quite a
So the
long
stair
stair?
goes for the length of the deck at the end, at the south side of the property, and the same image, it's to the end of the retaining wall. So the stairs, there's the square little piece of landscaping there, we don't even come quite to on that. And that's with the stair at the end, so the deck's actually shorter than that with the landing at the top.
Because you've got armor stone beyond that, right? In the picture, I see armor stone.
On the other side of the retaining wall,
No, be behind the platform. Going towards the lake.
down here,
I see a row of armor stone.
the patio pavers on the ground.
No,
We just pop over.
it shows the stairs going down to a platform. Right here.
Oh, yeah, you're farther than. We go here, this steps are here. So the stairs are actually right here,
Oh,
and the deck is right here. So the deck structure goes to the end of this, and then
To the end of the
stairs come down. to the end.
okay. Thank you.
I think. Gives you an idea that the doors upstairs, the deck are. And we're looking at that picture with a little bit of that landscaping.
Right.
So what you were looking at is like over here.
Over here, okay, good, thank you.
Chairman,
Yes,
what material will the deck and the post be made from? Was it treated spruce or
It's gonna be treated lumber, yes.
treated lumber? Okay.
any further questions from the board? Seeing none. I have a motion for the hearing board to move into deliberation.
Thank you very much.
For the LPRCA hearing board does now enter into a closed session to discuss litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals. Example, local planning, appeal tribunal affecting the authority. So I need a mover and a second. Tom and Rainey. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. So we are now going to closed session. I'd like to advise Jake Colomaya that his request has been approved.
Thank you very much, everyone on the board.
So I,
Just a minute.
Thank you again, everybody.
so I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors does now adjourn from sitting as a hearing board. No?
No, he hasn't said the hearing,
Oh.
but yes, but he did.
So I need a mover and a second. Mike and Doug. Those in favor? That's good. So we'll move on to number 5 on the agenda. That the minutes of the LPRCA Board of Directors meeting held October 4th, 2023 be adopted as circulated. A mover and a second, Tom and Peter. Is there any omissions or corrections required to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's good. So there's no business arising from the previous minutes. A review of committee minutes, there's none. Correspondence is none. So we'll move to development applications. We have 21 applications. Leanne, would you speak to that, please?
Through the chair, staff have approved 21 applications for development since our October Board of Directors meeting. The report summarizes the location and the nature of the permits that we've approved. The map on page 62 shows you where in the watershed that these permits have been issued. This report has been provided for your information, and if you have any questions, I can answer them.
Yes, Doug.
Yeah, through you to Leanne, Mr. Chairman. On page 58, Leanne, the one on 58 Simcoe Boulevard, is that on the Dingle Creek? It's the last, second from the last to the bottom of the page.
I would have to look, through the chair, I'd have to look at the address. I don't see every application.
Oh, okay.
So this might have been one that one of the planners had just, I don't know where exactly. What
It appears to be, because it's the only ravine, I guess, in that area that I'm aware of, and that's where the Dingle Creek goes through, and I'm wondering, like, that's gone around in circles for years with us, and I've heard no more on it for some time, and I just wonder if anything changed, if it's under a municipal drain, if it goes ahead, what's gonna happen, so that's fine. So, thank you.
Yes, Judy.
I just looked it up. I did approve that permit, and it is in fact on the Dingle Creek.
So this deck obviously is within the parameters of the drain, then it must be. That's where your regulation would come into effect, right?
Through the chair, so the water course itself is regulated, and then all those homes along there have the steep slopes leading down to the water course. So we would regulate up and above the top of the bank
Top of the bank.
and beyond, depending on the height of the bank. There's a factor that's involved, but a lot of those homes that are abutting Dingle Creek are regulated by our office.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 58, I think there's a couple of typos on permit 20723 and 20823. I don't think we got 182 concessions. I don't think we got 436 concessions. That might be a plan number that's supposed to be in there.
Through the chair, yeah, that might have been planned instead of concession, but the 911 address is correct.
Something will be checked before we approve the minutes next month, and sure it is correct.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to staff. I was going to also mention, I don't recall a 436 concession. Thank you. My question is about the second application, 17723. I guess it's to Leanne. Is this correct? This cistern is 30,000 gallons? I guess first my question is, don't we usually use liters? And 30,000 gallons is around 115,000 liters. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I would have to look at the application in order to see if that's or not. I have seen some very large cisterns going in as of late. Just to, I think people want to make sure they have an adequate water supply and don't want to keep refilling it, but yeah, without having the actual permit in front of me with the drawings, I can't say whether or not that's a typo or correct.
And I guess, do we not usually use liters to measure this? Just, I've not seen gallons before.
Sometimes with construction, I mean, usually when we get applications for homes, everything's in feet, because that's what the building trade uses. So sometimes it's just how it comes in, but if the board would like us to write our reports in liters versus gallons, we can start.
And the reason I'm asking is there's another cistern later, I think it's Turkey Point, it's 9,000 liters. So I'm just wondering about the consistency.
Okay. Be based on what they, it would be based on what they said.
Yeah.
Duly noted. Any further questions for Leanne? Yes, Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in reference to the one that Councillor Michelle brought forward on the rather large storage structure. If that's for a single residence, does staff work with those residents to advise as to the possibility of stagnant water? If something is that large for a single home, like somebody should be telling them something, because I mean, you're not going to use that volume of water ever.
Through the chair, no, that is kind of outside of our purview. I would hope either the building department or the designer who's involved with them would have that conversation.
Any further questions for Leanne? Okay, hearing none.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Kelly.
I don't really have a
Shelley.
question, just a comment. So underneath my garage, I have 12,000 liters. I haven't bought a load of water in 5 years. So a 30,000 gallon cistern for a home is ludicrous.
Yeah, that's, sorry.
Yes.
I'm sure staff will check this and advise them, but I do believe that is a horse farm operation that they board horses and have a big riding arena. And I just want water for horses, and I don't, if that's what it's for, if that's the right place in my mind that I'm thinking, that probably is the right size.
So you're saying they drink a lot of water?
The horses.
Any further questions? Right.
But it's under a garage.
Yeah.
So it's part of a house, I take
Yeah,
it.
there's probably one.
I just pulled it up on Google Earth. And it is quite an interesting property. It's a huge home on there.
Yeah, that's the one.
So,
Yeah, it's across from the Blueberry Hill
right,
Winery.
and it's got a large pond with it also.
Any further questions? So I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors receives the Section 28 regulations, approved permits report with amendments dated November 1st, 2023 as information.
Moved.
Moved by David and seconded by Shelley. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So now we'll go to new business, and the first one is the general manager's report. Judy? Oh, sorry.
So sorry, through you, the chair, just one quick question, just with the questions that were asked, would those be corrected and then show up in the minutes coming forward? If there are corrections to be made?
Not usually, we just usually put it in the next minutes that there was an amendment.
Okay, thank you very much, just for clarification, thank you.
No problem, Randy. Clarification. So Judy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, for the month of October, I just wanted to highlight some things that have been, going on at the authority. And our camping season wrapped up. We had a good year. We had 451, seasonal camping sites, which was about 10 sites more than last year. We are addressing some hazard tree issues in, getting all the water systems put to bed for the winter. the projects at the back is education, the conservation center has started at the front on the stairs and the, louvers and the dormers, so that's progressing. We have, 3 large projects going on. As you know, the Victoria Environmental Assessment's ongoing. We have a big otter floodplain mapping project underway. And then we also have, hydrology project ongoing. And those will all be wrapped up early next year. I did send out a message to the staff members about the, hemlock woolly, of allergen, that we have found. It was confirmed at our, forest track at the Haldeman CA. Staff have been reaching out and we're trying to coordinate an effort there with adjacent, landowners, so that we can, treat the area and the hemlock trees to try to contain it, as it doesn't seem to be, that it's spread out past that area. So we're in that process right now, trying to get the interest, of the adjacent landowners, and then we'd be doing inventories, and we do have, funding that we can access to cover, contract spraying and the chemical. And the chemical's been approved for, 1 year to next August by the government. So, we thought that would be a good thing to do to try to contain it to that area if we can. And, I just highlighted some things just to let the board know that staff are back. We are starting to get back to do some training sessions. And I listed a few that the staff attended over the month of September and October.
Any questions for Judy for the board? Yes, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judy, the hemlock woolly adelgid, how big a concern is that? Like, we're not talking on the scale of the emerald ash borer, are we? Like, would there be that extent of damage, or I just don't know what our concentration of hemlock would be?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We do have hemlock. We have tried to map it for our properties. We do have hemlock trees spread out. Obviously, it's not the dominant, species, but in that area, I think we have over 400 stems that the staff have identified, there, and we're thinking that they're probably gonna be very similar amounts in some of the larger stands around us. And the one property next to us has a lot more, but on a percentage, I wouldn't be able to really gauge, like for our area, how much hemlock trees, but it is a devastating, where it has hit, it has wiped out the hemlock trees, so, in the States.
Any further questions for Judy? Seeing none. I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors receives a general manager report for October 2023 as information. A mover and a seconder. Peter and Rainey. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. So now we have the quarter financial report. Aaron, can you speak to that?
Yes, thanks, John. So the Q3 financial report provides actual versus budget comparison of revenues and expenditures for the authority for the fiscal period up to and including September 30th. Operating revenue through the first 9 months of the fiscal total 5.28 million and expenditures total 3.95. Revenues represented 90.8% of the annual budget and expenditures represented 70.9%, resulting in a $1.3 million surplus for the period. Revenues are 820,000 greater than 2022, or up 18.4% year over year. And expenditures are 717,000 greater, or up 22.2% for the same period. The surplus of 1.34 million for the fiscal up to and including September 30th is 103,000 greater than 2022. The planning user fees this year are down $42,256, or 17.6% compared to 2022. Although the planning fees, user fees are down in comparison to the previous fiscal, we're still on target to attain our budget of $230,000 for 2023. Camping revenues at September 30th were 1.99 million in comparison to 1.9 million from 2022. As Judy mentioned, we had 451 seasonal campers that registered, exceeding the budget projection of 430 sites. Seasonal camping revenues exceeded the target by 38,000, or approximately 3.1%. And seasonal revenues are 85,000 greater than 2022. Overall, the campgrounds generated a surplus of 704,000 for the fiscal year to date. Overall, the authority is in a favorable position up to and including September 30th. If the board has any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Any questions for Aaron regarding the Q3 financial report, Doug?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's not a financial question. It applies to the Lee Brown Marsh, Mr. Chairman, through you to, I guess, anybody, but are we gonna be, can we feed again now back, or no? Is that still restricted, or what's the status?
Through the chair to Doug, and we did receive a feeding permit this year from the federal government. And we were able, basically, its operations as normal. There were a few conditions attached to the permit relating to if we found a sick bird, to report it, things like that. But yes, so we were able, there was some good lobbying completed. And the government did issue the feeding permits this year.
So safe to say we'll have more hunters and the revenue will go up, right?
Well, we're able to secure and maintain our revenue because another year like last year, we would, definitely our attendance would be down.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Aaron? Peter? Oh, sorry, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm looking at page 79, the capital summary. Aaron, at the bottom there, administration, office furniture, and flooring upgrades. Can you bring us up to speed? It's in progress. Where are we with that particular project?
So we have had a design company complete a design and the floor layout and all of the plans for the office area out there. We have paid for that. We're in the process of looking at options to get vendors to bid on it. And since this was put in the budget a few years ago and office equipment has significantly increased, there will be it'll be included in the 2024 draft budget.
So we'll be seeing that at the budget session.
We received one quote, yes.
We'll see that at the budget session then.
Yes, it'll be.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Peter, you had?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions now. I just did have one, but thanks to Mike, second one. I'm just wondering about the process. So we don't own this building, and I get the idea of new furniture, but when you're talking about flooring, who pays bill for that?
We would be paying the bill for that.
Kind of generous of us, but if we don't own the building and it's attached to the floor, that just seems a little odd to me. Anyway.
Well, we're treating it as like an improvement to the area. I mean, we wouldn't be able to use the floor as it stands. It's like to put new furniture on the current floor would not make sense. The floor tiles are damaged and some are missing, so.
It's called a leasehold improvement.
I don't want to spend much time on this, Chair. I'm good.
That would be, that's the least of our costs. But the expensive part we would be able to take with us because it'd be all modular.
Question through you to Aaron. Aaron, you indicate that campgrounds have generated a significant surplus again, and that's great news. Do you anticipate a lot of expenditures from now to the end of the year on the campground side of things, or are we pretty well there?
For you, Mr. Chair, there will be 2 payrolls that will have been processed in October. And then the workshop guys will be closing down the water systems and doing some upgrades that had to be done this year before the next season. So there will be some additional costs, but not significant.
Any other questions for Aaron? Seeing none. I have a motion, the LPRCA Board of Directors receives the Q3 financial report, September 30th, 2023, for the fiscal period up to including September 30th, 2023 as information. A mover and a seconder, Chris and Tom. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. So now we have the ecological survey, and Judy, are you gonna speak to that?
I am, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the ecological survey report, we provided it in your package. It was completed by Natural Resource Solutions, the same provider we've used the last couple of years. Their pricing is very competitive. So really, the purpose of the surveys is we do the 2-season survey to identify species at risk, the plants, and in order to ensure that those species are protected under the Endangered Species Act. So the properties are surveyed before logging operations to make sure all the species at risk and the habitat are protected and flagged in the field. So in this report, there were 4 properties surveyed: the Hughes Tract, the Craighead, the Wilson Block number 2, and portion of the Coppin, Ferris, and Armstrong Tract. So a total acreage of 576.18 acres were surveyed. And these properties are included in the 5-year operating plan for the upcoming forest management activities. So in the various properties, we did endangered species that you can note are the American chestnut, black ash, butternut, and the eastern Florida dogwood. They also did note and gave us locations by GPS location of invasive species that we will be able to use that information to continue doing some invasive species control. Our staff are doing that, the forestry staff. So that information will also be used. And we took advantage of we have some funding, so we're able to do a larger acreage this year. So approximately half of that is funded by the federal government funding that we received. So it's a lot of acres that we got surveyed.
Thank you, Judy. Any questions for Judy? Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judy, on page 87, the chart down at the bottom, the one thing that stood out to me is that the Hughes Tract and the Great Head Tract, the survey dates are relatively close together. Are you satisfied that the 2 seasons were well enough covered on those 2 tracts?
Yes, Debbie Thane, the forestry supervisor, she looks after this, and yes, she was satisfied with the work completed.
Any further questions for Judy? Seeing none?
Sorry, just as a follow-up to that, so a little more on that. So depending on what is in the different forest tracts, some things, but they can identify things earlier based on what the species are in the forest tract. So that's another reason why they have to wait for some things to mature, come out. So depending what's in that tract, that's why the dates would vary.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I have a motion, the LPRCA Board of Directors receives an ecological survey report as information. I need a move in a second. Rainey and David. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. So I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors does now enter into closed session to discuss the position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by on behalf of the authority. I need a mover in a second. Doug and Rainey. You? Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? That's good. So we are now in closed session. Okay, so, one other item, next meeting is November 8th, 2023 at 9:30 a.m., budget meeting. And the next board meeting, December the 6th, 2023, with the change time to 4 p.m. Board of Directors meeting, and then after that, we're going to go to our dinner. And my next item is that this meeting is now adjourned.